I'm JP Tuesday.
And I'm Kiki Cannon. As lifelong Disney fans, the work of countless talented Disney creatives have shaped our lives.
Now, as the Disney catalog expands, we're taking a journey through film and television to discover if that spark that shaped us as children lives on in adulthood.
Does your favorite Disney media still cast that same spell? Join us as we find out. We are Rewatching the Magic.
Carpe Diem, Kiki.
Seize the day, Tuesday.
We are talking Dead Poets Society, the 1989 movie starring Robin Williams. And he is the highest profile actor in this movie. He is advertised as the lead. He was nominated for awards as the lead in this movie, but he's not the main character. Robin Williams' character of Mr. Keating, not really the focus of the movie. The movie is the story of the kids and their lives. So while this is a Robin Williams movie, he does very little in the movie. So if people are going to go, oh, let's watch a Robin Williams movie, and you put on this and you realize he's not in the movie that much, it's interesting for someone like myself, who, again, I don't remember if I ever saw this movie the whole way through the last time I saw it, but seeing it for this rewatch the whole way through and realizing how little Robin Williams is actually in this movie.
Well, the interesting thing is that I had not seen this movie in many years. I had seen it several times all the way through. When I was younger, I watched this movie quite a bit. But it had been a while since I had seen the film all the way through. And I was kind of shocked by how little Robin Williams was actually in this movie, because thinking back on the movie, I remembered him being in much more of the movie than he actually is.
Yeah, especially when you have that era, that late 80s era Robin Williams. A lot of the scenes, no offense to Robin Williams, but if you see in those movies over and over again, a lot of those scenes start to bleed together. No offense. So it kind of feels like he's in whatever movie you're watching a lot more than he actually was, because you're remembering scenes that would make sense in the movie you're watching but are from other films. At least that's how I felt. I don't know about you.
Well, I think for me it was just that the scenes I remember from this movie are all the Robin Williams scenes. And so with that being the stuff that I remember so vividly, I think my brain kind of converted that into that is the majority of the movie.
And that, especially the ending of the movie, the Captain My Captain scene, has been parodied and memed to death at this point.
Yeah. Before we go any further, we are going to have to give a couple of warnings on this one. First of all, this is going to be one of our warnings of, if you're one of our listeners that listens with your littles in the room, this is one of the ones that maybe you don't listen with the littles in the room. Sorry. We have a very little friendly episode coming next week. Come back for that one. But this one is more for our older audience. Sorry about that one. This was a Touchstone film. That was the Disney brand that was for their more, adult-centered films. So, even though this is not an R-rated film, and it's not really going to be an R-rated discussion, not really something that the little ones probably should be in the room for.
And if you've seen the movie before, you kind of know why we're throwing this out there. If you don't, yeah. And that's all.
Trigger warning for self-harm. Let's just put that. Massive and irreversible self-harm. Let's say that. Okay?
Yes.
So if you are not in a mental place where you can handle that kind of discussion, we totally understand. We have a massive back catalog. Please go listen to one of those episodes, or come back next week when we will be discussing a very lighthearted fare that is, happy and joyful and whatever. But this is a drama. So it does get a little dark.
So I think the best way to go about this is to talk about each character's story individually. The movie itself takes place in the 1950s at a boarding school for boys. Robin Williams enters the story pretty much at the start as he is the new English teacher for the school and was a former student at the school as well. And they do make a big thing about how many of their graduates go on to become doctors and lawyers and men of high scholar. If you're coming to this school, you are set, basically.
Well, they specifically say that they go on to Ivy League, and Robin Williams' character, Keating, did not go to Ivy League, but he went to England and he went to the University of Cambridge. So even more prestigious than Ivy League, which I find very interesting. And then they say that he spent time teaching in England and now he has come back to his alma mater to teach English for, this boarding school that he went to when he was a kid.
So he kind of connects to the kids. I've been here. I know what you're going through. So he can connect to the students on that level. Mr. Keating also has a very unorthodox method of teaching rather than going through the tried and true curriculum that the school has established since the school's creation. He skips around the book. He teaches, sometimes not even teaching it in a classroom, but in a courtyard. He already runs afoul of the rest of the faculty of the school, including the headmaster, who kind of have it out for him pretty much from the jump. They're just waiting for him to mess up so they can fire him due to his unorthodox teaching methods. So on that note, we've talked about this on the show before. Kiki, you are a former teacher yourself.
And specifically an English teacher.
So as a former English teacher, the unorthodox methods that Mr. Keating employs in the film.
The funny thing is that not only have I worked as a teacher, I come from a family of teachers. Many people in my family either are currently or have been teachers. My father, to an extent, was this sort of teacher. It was well known at the place he taught at that, sometimes people would have to walk into his classroom and they would find him lying on the floor, doing something, or he had one thing where that involved students trying to tell him how to put on a jacket, and it always ended up with him tangled up in a jacket. And sometimes people would walk into the room to deliver, a message from the administration, and he would be, tangled up in his suit jacket, just standing in front of the classroom. And it was just kind of known that, okay, he's doing something weird now. And they learned to get used to it. Interestingly enough, my father was a great fan of this movie. But, I have had lots of teachers like this. I was a bit of a teacher in this same vein, to the extent that I could get away with at my former positions. The things that I kind of really related to were, there's the infamous scene where they open up the poetry book that they've been assigned, and the guy who wrote the book was like, here's a mathematical formula to tell you how good a poem is. And immediately Keating is like, okay, see, all of this stuff, just rip all that out of the book because it's completely, excrement, is what he says. And having studied and taught this sort of thing, yes, exactly. Excrement is a kind word for that. It's the sort of thing that makes anyone who is passionate about literature and the arts, what's the line from Clue? Flames on the side of my face? That's the sort of reaction you get if you're the sort of person who has devoted their life to that sort of thing. So that whole rip it out and throw it away, whoa, that scene. When I was a kid, I was like, yeah, anarchy, just rip bits out of textbooks. But having been in the Robin Williams position now, I'm like, yes, fight the system. You go, Robin Williams. I am on your side completely. I understand this on a deep spiritual level, you know.
And it feels like this is part of Robin Williams' personal view on the arts. Off mic, when we were, preparing to do the episode, you had sent me a PSA that I do remember Robin Williams doing in the late 90s. After Aladdin and Disney and Robin Williams reconciled, he did several PSAs in character as the genie called Great Minds Think for Themselves, which aired during ABC's One Saturday Morning block. I remember that.
And also on the Disney Channel.
Yeah. So when you threw that PSA at me, it was like, I remember this. So yeah, it feels like that's part of Robin Williams' own belief system in terms of the arts, is that you cannot make a formula for how the arts work. You have to feel it. He wants these kids to be free thinkers, to think for themselves, much to the chagrin of the headmaster. Kids at these age, they shouldn't be thinking for themselves. They should be sticking to the curriculum because it works. He wants these kids to be free spirits, free to be their own person, and not to be shackled by the pressures of society, by their own parents' expectations, which that's my transition to kind of the main character of the movie, which is Neil. Robert Sean Leonard as Neil. This is only his third film. And the irony is that one of his most famous modern roles was on House, where he played a doctor. And here him in one of his early roles playing a kid who was pressured to become a doctor by his father.
Yeah, the joke in the House fandom, which I am a part of, is that House is the alternate universe where Neil became a doctor.
And his father's Red Foreman.
Yeah, I just want to say real quick while we're on that, has Kurtwood Smith ever played a character that is not a douchebag?
RoboCop, that 70s show, Rambo 3. I can't think of one.
I mean, like, every character I can think of that I've ever seen him in, he's always been a douche.
It works. Sometimes typecasting works, and I'm sure that he is a very nice person in real life. I have never met him. And I'm sure he's a very nice person to people who have met him. But he looks like a douchebag. He looks like that guy that will look down on everybody he meets because he thinks he's better than them.
Yeah, it's very fascinating. Like you, I have no idea what the man is like in his personal life. He might be the nicest person in history, but he has that, if you're casting him, he has that look about him that just makes you think like he should be playing a douchebag.
Yeah.
And I mean, I gotta say that it's worked out well for him because he has had a very long and very good career out of playing a douchebag.
Yeah. So that is Neil's story. He's gone to the school. He is kind of seen as the leader of his friend group, the friend group that rechristens themselves the Dead Poets Society. He is the one that finds the old yearbook with Keening in it, and he sees Keening's accomplishments. Member of the Dead Poets Society, which is this unofficial club that he was part of when he was going to the school, where they would just get together and read poetry. And even some of their own verse was read at meetings. It was just, that was their friend group. And Neil has rechristened their little friend group as the new Dead Poets Society, and that's what they're going to do. They're going to go to this cave off the grounds of the school and just read poetry to each other and share stories and just hang out in an environment where there's no pressure to do or be anything. And it is Neil at the start of this school year that is rooming with the new student, Todd. Young Ethan Hawke, again, this is also his third movie he ever did. He brings Todd into the friend group and he encourages Todd to kind of come out of his shell and express himself in ways, even though Todd kind of is very shy about that.
It takes forever in this movie for Ethan Hawke to get a line.
Because he's mumbling for most of it, because his character is nervous. His character is just, I'm not sure of anything or anyone. And yeah, and it is his character that finally finds himself some and is the first one to say, "Captain, my captain," at that ending scene. Because thanks to Neil, he found the courage within himself to come out of that shell.
Yeah, but I mean, it's not even just mumbling. It's like, I don't think for the first 30 minutes of this movie, he actually says a word. I think he just kind of nods while Robert Sean Leonard does all the talking. I think maybe he says his name at one point or something, but as far as any sort of legit dialogue, I think it's the first 30 minutes of the movie before he actually says anything beyond hello or his name.
Because he's Neil saying, "Hey Todd, join us, hang out with us tonight." He's like, no, I gotta study. It's like, all right, suit yourself. We're gonna just hang out and smoke cigarettes and just talk about girls. You can study all you want, bud. But to get back to my original point about Neil, is not only is he the leader, not only he is the one that rechristens their group, the Dead Poets Society, he finds love in the arts. There is the big plot in the movie of Neil finally finding something that he wants to do, his own person, his own dream. Neil doesn't want to be a doctor. That's his father's dream. His father is a doctor, and he's trying to push his son to become a doctor. Right at the beginning of the movie, his father comes in there saying, "You took too many extracurricular activities last year and it almost affected your grades. You're going to cut all of those extracurricular activities out. You're going to focus solely on your studies. And then once you graduate from this school, you're going to go on and you're going to become a doctor." His life is being told to him by his father. Neil has no say in this situation. His father is saying, "You will be a doctor, whether you want to be or not." And through the inspiration of Mr. Keating, Neil finds the love of the arts within him, and it inspires him to audition for a local community theater play of A Midsummer Night's Dream. And he's so happy when he not only goes for the audition, not only he succeeds at the audition, he gets the role of Puck, basically the lead in the play. First swing out of the fence. And he is so happy. He is so joyful. He feels things that he's never felt before. For the first time in his life, he is going down his own path, not the path that his father set for him. And his father is furious. My son is not going to be an actor. My son is going to be a doctor. You have to get this silly acting business out of your head. Eventually, he does allow him to, because Neil's already forged his father's signature on the permission slip to be part of the play to begin with. So even if his father were to personally drag him out of the theater kicking and screaming, he's still going to run back in there and do the play.
The interesting thing about this is that Neil never says in any of this that his life's aspiration is to be an actor. He just wants to do a play, and his father freaks out and stuff. Now, over the years, people have speculated that the real issue was not that Neil wanted to do some acting or whatever. It's that Neil is gay and the father is trying to make sure that that doesn't come out.
This is a movie that takes place in the 1950s time already. The idea of the Hollywood type already existed. You know, the same things you hear about now, it was the same things you heard about then. And the fact that he walks into a theater and sees his son prancing around the stage in a leotard, in his brain confirms all of his fears. Like, he doesn't even see the end of the play. He is walking out of there before the curtains close, and he is dragging his son into the car. Like, we're done here. You're not going to talk to your friends about this. You're going to get in the car. I'm going to take you home. And hopefully you've got this acting bug out of you, because you are going to be a doctor one way or the other. And it's so sad because Neil is so proud of himself. You know, his first gig as an actor, he gets the lead. All of his friends are there cheering him on. He gets a standing ovation in that little small community theater. He's feeling that rush, and he's so happy. And there's his father just to bring him back down, just to say, we're not going to do any of this silly stuff anymore. I agree with you that it could be seen in that parallel. His father just does not accept him in whatever life he's going to choose for himself. I get the similarities, but you know, you're right. There's nothing else in this movie that implies that Neil wanted to be an actor. He just found this love of the art through his English teacher, and he wanted to give it a shot. Carpe Diem.
If you're really paying close attention, there are some hints prior to Keating showing up in their lives that Neil is more artistic than people realize. Like, he's very desperate to be on the editorial committee for the yearbook and stuff. And his father is saying, that's not the important one. You need to focus on your other extracurriculars, and you have too many extracurriculars and stuff. And he's so proud because he's finally worked his way up to being the editor. He's put in a lot of work, and he's finally in the position he wanted to be in. And I have a feeling that at such a conservative boarding school that they're at, that the, yearbook committee is probably the closest thing to an artistic output that is available in the extracurriculars. We see that they have lots of sports teams and such. There's probably a debate team and a trivia team and all that kind of stuff.
I mean, one of the other kids is one of the editors of the school paper. And we'll come back to this in a little bit. So you might be right. There isn't a lot of artistic expression available at this boarding school. And that's probably why he's taking the extracurriculars, to be more expressive. And his father is seeing that as, yeah.
And maybe not even that, but like, let's get rid of those and focus on the extracurriculars that are going to be more useful in getting into the type of schools I want to get you into.
That too.
Is editor of the yearbook really going to be the thing that Harvard or Yale is going to prioritize over, the debate team or whatever?
But the whole thing is, going back to my original point, is Neil feels very boxed in. And that is why he's taking these extracurriculars, why he decided to be in a play, because it's his choice, something that he chose himself to do rather than something his father chose for him to do. Who knows how many other times Neil has made a choice for himself that went against what his father wanted. We don't know. We only know what we're shown in the film. But it seems to be this acting thing seems to be the, quote, last straw for both of them. Because after the play ends, Neil's father saying, I'm taking you out of this school. This school put too many bad ideas into your head. I'm going to put you in a different school. Your focus is going to be solely on your studies. And then you are going to go on, and then you are going to become a doctor.
And not just any school. He wants to put him in a military boarding school.
I guess he believes the military is going to beat the sissy out of him.
Yeah, probably.
So in that situation, Neil feels there is no escape. He is going to lose all of his friends because he is going to be taken out of the school. He is going to be forced into a life that is not his choosing. And there is nothing he can do to convince his father to budge even a little bit about the life that Neil wants to live. His father has already planned out Neil's entire life for him. Neil does not have a choice. And this is where the trigger warning comes in. Because if you're in a situation where you feel you have no choice in your life, what choice do you have? This final scene for Neil, in my opinion, is the best filmed scene in the movie. Because we see Neil, he's stripping off his costume from the play. He still has that wooden crown on his head from the play. His parents have gone to bed, and Neil has already made the choice. He goes down to his father's office. He grabs his father's firearm. We do not see the firearm until after the act because it's wrapped in a cloth. And the music is so swelling in that moment. You never see it happen. You never hear it.
Yeah, you don't hear it. That's the interesting thing, because it cuts away to the parents sleeping and you expect to hear the sound. And instead, the sound just goes completely blank. And the father wakes up and says, "What was that noise?"
And I love how it's done because you have the music swelling up and then it instantly cuts off. And the father wakes up. What was that sound?
Which somehow the lack of sound is more horrific than what you are expecting.
And yeah, his father runs downstairs. He sees his office door is open. He goes in there and all he does is smell the air. And he can smell the freshly fired weapon.
And you do see the smoke, yeah.
And then you see the full firearm on the floor of the office. And then you just see Kurtwood Smith peering around his desk. They never show Neil the aftermath. And they don't have to, because you feel it.
The only thing you ever see of Neil is his hand.
Yeah.
His hand next to the firearm. And that is enough. There's nothing else, you know?
And they never show what Neil looks like in the aftermath because they don't have to. The camera is just, it's like we're peering into these people's lives. We're spying on them. We are looking into the office from the outside as Neil's parents are holding their son behind this desk, shocked and grieving in this moment as their son has taken his life. And like I said, that entire part is the best filmed scene in this movie because it's shot so well. It's what you don't hear and it's what you don't see that really make that scene. And I feel if you had heard the firearm go off, if you had seen the aftermath of Neil, the scene would not be as impactful. The next character I want to talk about is John Charles as Knox. Because right at the beginning, you don't really think much about Knox, but right at the beginning, his family is meeting up with a family called the Danburys. The father of this family was a former student at the school. And these two families are going to have this dinner, get to know each other, hobnob with the Joneses, as it were. And he comes to the door and he sees, as he describes it, the most beautiful girl he's ever seen, Chris, the daughter of this former student. And he is instantly smitten with her. The rest of the movie is his story of trying to win her heart. He takes the notion from Mr. Keening that poetry can make girls swoon. He's going to try to make this girl swoon for him through poetry. But Chris has a boyfriend named Chet, who's a member of the football team at the local high school. Chris does not go to the boarding school because the boarding school is for boys only and no girls allowed. So she goes to the local high school. And this does play into some of the, beats of the dorky guy versus the jock boyfriend tropes. But I don't know if this movie wants to play it as a good thing or not. Because it really is pushing the Carpe Diem thing. All of these kids are seizing the day in their own way. Like Neo going for the play was him seizing the day. Knox is trying to seize the day by trying to win Chris's heart, even though she has a boyfriend. But Chris does seem to care for Knox, but seemingly not in the way Knox wants her to, because he has to see her. He's so, enamored with her. He has to make her his. But she's like, oh, hey, yeah, I was going to call you because Chet's parents are out of town this weekend. They're going to throw a party at his place. I want you to come. Well, she wants you to go to her boyfriend's party. Yeah, but she was thinking about me, man. She was thinking about me. So he sees that as a bit of a win. At no point in this movie does Chris even have any indication that she has any kind of romantic feelings for Knox at all. Again, she has a boyfriend. And Knox is very persistent in trying to get with Chris. He's even saying, just give me one shot, one chance. And if it doesn't work, I'll leave you alone. I'm done. I don't know how this movie wants to present it because it seems to want it both ways. Because Knox is one of the main characters. You kind of want to root for him. But also the way the movie frames it, it's very much she sees him only as a friend.
To be honest, I did not find this particular storyline that interesting.
Like I said, it seems like the movie wants it both ways. They want us to root for Knox to get the girl, but also the girl doesn't seem to be into Knox that way. She even says, you barely know me. How can you say that you're in love with me? But also Knox seems to take the Carpe Diem message that Mr. Keening has said in a sort of slightly inappropriate direction, because during this party scene, Chris kind of falls asleep. Nothing inappropriate. He doesn't, depending on what you consider inappropriate, because he starts like brushing her hair with his hand. He does put a kiss on her forehead, and then Chet almost kills him, and he's right to do so. I don't know. Like the movie never even tells us what happens at the end of it all with Knox. It's like he goes to her school, embarrasses her in front of her class by reading a poem to her. He's going to go to the play anyway. We don't know why she's going to the play. Like her and her friends are going to the play, but it's never established why she's going. Does she have another friend in the show? I don't know.
Here's the thing, okay? So Lara Flynn Boyle is in this movie technically, but almost all of her stuff was cut out. And she plays Chet's younger sister, okay? And so, Chet is Chris's boyfriend, the football player, and Lara Flynn Boyle, who has gone on to be a big star, is playing his younger sister, who almost all her scenes have been cut out. But there is a bit where Neil's father confronts Neil about being in the play. And Neil is like, how did you find out I was in the play? And he was like, this woman said, oh, my niece is in a play with you. And I'm like, no, my son isn't in a play. And you made a liar out of me. He's talking about Lara Flynn Boyle's character, who is Chet's sister. The thing is that Chris was going to go because Chet's sister is in this play, which makes it even more douchey that Chet is not going to go to the play because his sister is in the play. So when Chris is like, oh, Chet going to a play? No. And I'm like, okay, but your sister is in the play. At least be a decent brother and go sit through your sister's thing,
Mm-hmm.
Lara Flynn Boyle is technically in the movie because you do see her at one point on stage with Neil, but we don't have any context for who she is because all of her other scenes were cut out. So that's who she's supposed to be, and you only really know that if you look into the background of the movie. So that's what's going on there, and that's why she was gonna go to the play, is because that's her boyfriend's sister, and she was, she knows the family, and presumably she's friends with the girl, and she was gonna be there to it be oh, I came to see you in the play,
Okay, so that makes sense. So they end up going to the play together, their unofficial date. And again, Chris kind of disappears from the movie right after it. So I assume that Chris said, okay, I gave you what you wanted, now leave me the hell alone.
Well, we do see them holding hands during the play and stuff, so
it's just, if there was something after that with those two characters to give us a little bit of closure, but there isn't in the movie, so I don't know.
Yeah.
The other character I wanted to talk about was Gail Hansen as Charlie, aka Nwanda. He really takes this poet society thing really seriously, and in some very light racism, because again, this is 1950s that this movie takes place in. They are still referring to the indigenous people as Indians. The cave that they have their meetings in is called Indian Cave. As Charlie gets more and more into the poetry stuff, he starts adapting more indigenous attributes into himself. He starts painting his face and painting his chest, and very I feel like the intent is good, but it's still kind of but it's also the 1950s, and that's just the way it was. Question mark. But, he wants to bring new members into the group. He's already has, by the midpoint of the movie, at least the poetry has worked for him because he's got two girls that are into him. And this inspires him in his position in the school paper to write an article asking the board to start inducting girls into the school, which gets him in trouble and really starts the downfall of the movie. Because as Keening says, I understand Carpe Diem. You took my words to heart and I appreciate that, but you did not think of the consequences of your actions, because Keening already has most of the faculty against him because of his unorthodox teaching methods to begin with. Now the phrase Dead Poet Society has been brought back into the school. They know he was a member. So they're already saying Keening is putting all of these crazy ideas into these boys' heads. But now Charlie's put Keening in trouble, and now he's put his friends in trouble. The headmaster is trying to find out who the members of this Dead Poet Society are, as he's threatening to expel them for the blasphemous wording of allowing females into the prestigious school. Ugh. It's another one, much like Knox, Charlie is having the negative effects of Carpe Diem, because Charlie is not thinking of the consequences of his action. Yes, he is seizing the moment, but he's not thinking when he's doing it. And it is his actions that start the turn that eventually leads to what we have at the end of the movie.
I do find it interesting that this article is what kind of kicks everything off. It seems like such a silly and seemingly innocuous thing, but the school treats it as such a horrific affront, which makes you wonder, what are they afraid of?
Women in this school? Preposterous. Women have no business in higher education. But, it's that traditionalist mindset that we get from the headmaster. We have a curriculum. It works. We have a system. It works. And Keening is upsetting that system, and he's putting these blasphemous ideas into the minds of these children. We have to stop this. We need to go back to the way things were because it worked. But even like if Charlie's reasons for wanting girls at the school was pure, I think I'd feel better for the character. Like if there was a scene where the kids sneaked off to a poetry session in town and they meet these two girls who are really into poetry and they wanted to go to the school because their fathers did and they couldn't because they were girls, and he says it's not fair, then maybe you could feel more for the character because he's at least coming from a good place. But no, he wants girls at school because he's tired of smuggling in nudie magazines and, getting himself off. In fact, one of his first poems that he reads in the movie is on the other side of a centerfold. I'm surprised that this is a PG movie because you are seeing stuff here. How many PG movies you have with boobs in it? So it's coming from a selfish and lust-filled place for Charlie rather than it's not fair that they don't get a chance to come to the school. I think at this point we just come back to Todd. He doesn't really have much of a story other than him coming out of his shell. The big moment for him, for Todd, other than Neil's death, is his birthday. During the movie, it's Todd's birthday. And Todd got a present sent to him by his parents. And it's a desk set. But it's also the same desk set he already has, which was a birthday present that his parents gave him last year. So there's already this notion that Todd's parents don't really pay attention to him. The fact that they don't even realize that they've bought him the same birthday present 2 years in a row. That's as much as we get with him. His parents seemingly are completely oblivious to him, and he has to come out of his shell. There's not much to that story, which just says a lot because, again, this is very young Ethan Hawke in one of his early films. Like, if you're an Ethan Hawke fan and you want to say, I want to know what his early movies was like, and you put in Dead Poets Society, despite him being like the new kid, he doesn't really get a lot of story in the movie. Like I said, Knox and Charlie get more of a story than he does. His whole thing is he's in his shell and Neil tries to break him out of it, and he doesn't really do that until after Neil dies.
The thing about Todd is that I think one of the more interesting scenes is when he is told that Neil has died. And he runs out into the snow, he gets sick, he starts saying it's not true, he wouldn't leave us like that. It shows you how truly important Neil was to him.
He takes it the hardest. He's the one that runs off and screams Neil's name right in the middle of the snow. Like, he's running away from the other friends he's made. He wouldn't have that. He wouldn't be in that group if it wasn't for Neil. He wouldn't have friends, period. So the closest thing he's had to a best friend is gone, and he's trying to figure out why. It is, it's the big turn for Todd in the movie. And like I said, the downfall starts with Charlie's article. And it really starts to snowball, for lack of a better term, with Neil's death. So rather than take the responsibility for trying to control their son's life, Neil's parents instead decide that they want Mr. Keening fired because he put those ideas into their son's head. If it wasn't for this teacher going off book, for lack of a better term, my son would still be alive. My son's going to be a doctor. He did it. It's his fault. And all of the parents of the other kids seem to be in agreement that it's Keening's fault, that he's put these ideas in their children's head, that they were good kids. They were going to go and be Ivy Leaguers if it wasn't for this blasphemous teacher. And they force the kids to sign this letter saying that Keening put them up to it. Keening forced them to form the Dead Poets Society. He forced these ideas into him. He coerced Neil to have these aspirations to be an actor. He forced Knox to stalk this young woman. He forced Charlie to write that article for the school paper. It's his fault and he needs to go. And that's what happens, unfortunately. What starts it is Richard Cameron, Dylan Cussman's character, who rats out the team. Every other kid, they're loyal. They're loyal to each other. They're loyal to Mr. Keening. They say nothing. But Cameron, he squeals. Why? Because he's not going to put his neck out for Mr. Keening. He's not going to put his neck out for his friends. He's looking out for himself. He's even saying, I'm not going to ruin my future for one person. I have all these opportunities and I'm not going to ruin it. To which Charlie, who was already on thin ice because of the article, he was already facing expulsion based on the article that girls should start coming to this school, punches Cameron in the face because he was out there anyway. And he didn't care because this guy, the guy that they thought was their friend, ratted them out. And he deserved it too. You know, I can joke about it, bros before, and all that. But he thought of himself. He threw his friends to the wolves. He threw Mr. Keening to the wolves to protect himself. And that's the final straw. That's what starts the parents getting together and having their kids sign this letter to get Mr. Keening fired.
Yeah, the thing, Cameron is such a little twerp. And it is interesting that they make sure that in the final scene that he stays seated with his head down. He does not attempt to be part of the group.
He's already out of the group. He's already done. It's also showing a bit of shame because here's the teacher that he got fired is back just to get his belongings and leave. And all of the other kids stand on their desks like he did earlier in the movie. They're saying, "Captain, my captain." And he's just sitting there with the guilt that he got this man fired for his own personal benefit. He's the one, Cameron is the one that the headmaster, who was the former English teacher before Mr. Keening, tells them to read the opening statement in the poetry book. The one that got ripped out. He's very much the anti-Mr. Keening. We're going to read this foreword. And it's a good foreword. It tells you everything you need to know about poetry. What Mr. Keening just told him was excrement. So it's like him being the only one to stay seated, him being the only one to not do the "Captain, my captain." It's fitting because he has to live with that now. So that's that final scene. Again, it has been parodied and kind of memed since this movie came out. It is one of the most well-known scenes in the film.
And when Robin Williams passed, fans actually reenacted that scene in memory of him.
The "Captain, my captain" is right at the beginning of the movie where he said, "You can call me Mr. Keening, you can call me Professor, or you can call me Captain, my captain." And they refer to him throughout the rest of the movie. They refer to him as Captain and I Captain. I Captain. And yeah, there's that final scene where Mr. Keening comes back for his belongings and the headmaster says, "Get your things and go. You've done enough damage around here." To which, it's Todd breaking out of his shell. "Mr. Keening, they made us sign that. We didn't want to, but they were going to expel all of us if we didn't." And Keening says, "I forgive you. It's okay." And as he's leaving, Todd just stands up on his desk. "Oh, Captain, my captain." And every other kid, with the exception of Cameron, each and every one of them getting on their desks in solidarity to this teacher that opened their minds to the arts and just their final act of defiance in the spirit. It's a great moment as they're just being as defiant as he is, with the headmaster in the room just yelling at him, "Sit down, sit down. If you don't sit down, you're all expelled." And it's a great moment. And like you said, when Robin Williams passed, so many fans stood on top of tables and desks and whatnot and just saying, oh, Captain, my Captain. Because much like you said with that PSA, this is just how Robin Williams seemingly felt about the arts. You've got to feel it. You can't have a mathematical equation of what art is. You can't learn about the arts through an article. You can't learn about the arts through a textbook completely. You got to feel it. You got to live it. And, I do this on a podcast, but you, Kiki, you've done it. You've acted on the stage. You've produced on the stage. You've wrote songs. You've been through this. You've lived this.
Yeah, he talks in there, Keating has several points where he talks about how the arts are the things that make us human. Yes, there are the things that we have to survive, and those are important. We survive so that we can do the things that make us human. And there is something about listening to people talk about the things they are passionate about. And it's not always about the arts. It can be science, or it can be, farming, or it can be, whatever a human is passionate about. And there is something truly great and inspiring about listening to any human talk about the thing that truly sparks passion in them. And if you are lucky enough to be around someone who is willing to share their passion for whatever their thing is with you, that is such a great feeling if you're willing to just sit back and let them do that. And you can learn so much from those interactions. And it's one of the things that Keating is trying to impart upon the students, especially with that thing about rip out the front of the textbook and stuff, is because you can't look at a thing that somebody is passionate about and reduce it to a mathematical formula.
And people have tried. Talking about whether shows are good based off ratings, based off audience scores, based off numbers, basically, versus did this movie tell a good story? Is this movie passionate about the story it's telling? Are the people involved passionate about the story they're telling? That's the entire reason we're doing this podcast. Are these movies that we grew up with genuinely good movies, or are they just meaningless content? That is the entire thing about this podcast. We say that this movie has the magic or not. Does this movie have the magic? Does this show have the magic?
And that's all we kind of really mean by that, is there some kind of passion involved in it? And will it spark some kind of passion in the viewer?
Yeah, and I think that's a great transition to Kiki. Does Dead Poet Society have the magic?
Yeah, I think it does. And there was something that I found when looking back at the research for this, because to me, this was always a great movie that had the magic. Okay, I grew up watching this movie over and over again. Like I said, my father was a massive fan of this movie. I grew up in a family with lots of teachers and stuff. So, this movie was very important to me growing up. And so I always thought of it as just a great movie, and I'm glad it holds up as an adult to me. But when I was doing research for the podcast, it turns out that there were so many reviewers at the time this movie came out that was like, this movie is kind of crap. It's way too melodramatic. It doesn't have much to say. And I was like, wow, I cannot believe these people were watching the same movie that I watched.
I think it comes down to what the movie was trying to say, is that there are people who, especially reviewers, film reviewers, who are put movies down into a box. Does it fit this box or not? And I guess from their perspective, this movie doesn't fit the box. But the thing is, the greater film community embraced this movie. This movie was nominated for Oscars. It was nominated for Best Picture. Robin Williams was nominated for Best Actor. This movie won Best Screenplay. So while the critics may have questioned the movie, the greater film community embraced this movie as one of the all-time greats. Carpe Diem is considered one of the greatest quotes in film history because of this movie. So does this movie have the magic? Absolutely. No question. This is an awesome movie. This is an amazing movie.
If you've never seen it and somehow, listen to this, I mean, there's a lot of stuff we skipped over that is really good that, we just didn't have time to get into.
We'd be here for 5 hours talking about this movie. We haven't even gotten into the subplot about the kids conforming in March and all that. We haven't even, but
yeah, but if you've never seen the movie, or you have only seen parts of it, or you haven't seen it for years and you don't remember much about it, do yourself a favor and go back and watch it if you can find it. This was one of those ones. Got to take a second to be a little bit annoyed about this. We put this on the schedule about a month ago, and this was on Disney Plus about a month ago. And when we went to watch it on Disney Plus, it was gone.
Yep. I hate when that happens. So we had to get this movie on digital to watch it.
Yeah. It is currently available to rent or purchase through several other, rental or purchasing sites. And it's worth it, And of course, if you can find it on physical media, do that. So yeah, highly recommend this movie.
Yeah, but to reiterate our first point, you might want to prepare yourself for the more heavy parts of the movie. And like I said, there's a part of the movie where a kid is holding a naughty magazine, and we see the women without clothing in full view. I'm amazed they let that go in a PG movie. Also, kids smoking. You never see that today.
Yeah.
But that's all we can say about Dead Poets Society. So let's move on to next week. Next week, Kiki, The Muppet Show is coming back.
Yay!
The Muppet Show special with Sabrina Carpenter will be airing about a week after this episode is released. So in honor of that, we are going to be doing a Muppet movie next week. The Great Muppet Caper, the second Muppet movie. I'm surprised it's taken us this long to do The Great Muppet Caper, since we've done like Christmas Carol and Treasure Island. So going back to Great Muppet Caper, which is very interesting because this movie came out when we were born. Not just the year we were born, but like within a month of both of us being born.
Yeah.
So that is going to be very interesting to go back to this film. A movie that, here's a sidebar. I actually didn't see this movie until I was older the first time. I never saw this movie as a kid. The only Muppet movie I never saw as a kid, and I don't know why. So it's going to be very interesting to coming back to this movie. So come back next week for The Great Muppet Caper, and we'll talk to you all next time. Bye. Carpe Diem.
Seize the day.
Don't let the magic stop here.
Keep the conversation going. Find us on Facebook, Instagram, and Threads at Rewatching the Magic.
We are also on Blue Sky, rewatchingthemagic.bsky.social. And new episodes are available at rewatchingthemagic.podbean.com and youtube.com/@rewatchingthemagic. Remember, the magic is for everyone.
It only stops if you let it.
We know that right now, things are tough.
But in the words of Jim Henson, the only way the magic works is by hard work. But hard work can be fun.
Check out our show notes for ways that you can help.